Welcome to the Money Insights Podcast, where high-income earners come to learn wealth-building strategies that will take them from high income to high net worth. With your hosts, financial and wealth-building experts, Christian Allen and Rod Zabriskie.
Welcome into today's episode of the Money Insights Podcast. I'm your host, Christian Allen, with my co-host. You know him as Rod the Pod Zabriskie, who has new glasses. Rod, what's going on, man?
Hey, I am doing great, and I do have new glasses. So here's the story. If
There's a story behind glasses?
just like the evolution of it.
All right.
Like a year ago, year plus ago, someone may have watched one or two episodes if they were watching on YouTube, and so they're like, "Oh, hey, Rod's wearing glasses," but then they went away. I needed reading glasses. I got bifocals anyway. Long story short, I didn't need them for the computer. So really quickly, I'm like, well, I don't need to keep wearing them. Well, so bad news is now I need them.
You now need them for the computer. So that's the whole thing. Are they the type you can disconnect in the middle?
It's pretty standard.
Well, I would encourage you to get the ones that snap out in the middle.
Apart.
Those are then during the episodes, I just think it'll be fun to watch. I feel like people who do that seem more smart for whatever reason. I don't know.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, just something to think about, Rod. Something to think about. Okay. So today, Rod, we're going to talk about kind of a fun twist on what we typically. Okay, we're talking about financial issues like we typically do.
Yep.
But today we're going to talk about and we're going to learn about financial issues through celebrity mishaps. That's right. We're going celebrity mishaps. And I even tried to make sure that we picked out celebs that even our very own Rod the Pod would know. And admittedly, there's not very many. So I had to go way back because Rod lived a normal childhood. And then as he came into his adulthood, he became a little bit more what would you a Quaker? Is that the right word? What's the style? Okay, maybe not a Quaker. And by the way, not that there's anything wrong with Quakers. They're awesome. But my point was just that you just kind of disconnected from a lot of the typical media stuff. Is that fair?
It's absolutely fair. We got I'm not going to call it a farm, but we got a couple of acres out more in the country.
I would have called it a farm. I did call it a farm.
Yeah. We did not have TV for a while.
That's insane. People are probably Christian, you're the one that has an issue here.
Well, what we would stream stuff. So football, sports, we still really wanted to watch, and we could stream and get, the football or the sports stuff that we wanted. And so that was great, But we've come back around. We now have a TV.
Now, I mean, you have there's so much, there's also educational stuff. It's not like
sure.
TV is so on demand now that you can literally choose what you want to watch. So if you want to watch good things that are relevant to you, then great. Yep. And that make your lives more enriched, then you could do it. And you could also watch a bunch of garbage that is kind of mind numbing, right? So anyway, but this is not an episode about that. This episode is about the celebrity mishaps that Rod may or may not know. So here's the good news. Rod has not been debriefed on our celebrities. And so what I want to do is see how many of the 10 or 12 that I have listed here, Rod, I want to see how many of them you actually know. Okay. And then we'll talk about the actual celebrity mishap, because when I bring it up, people will kind of oftentimes remember the story or the person, the situation. So this, I think, will most people will think about it as we go through them. They'll be like, oh yeah, I remember hearing about that, or I remember hearing about that. And I do feel a little bad because I don't want to pick on the celebrities, and I do feel bad for anyone in finance, but it's just so easy. It's the examples are so public that it just makes it a lot easier and more relatable for a broad audience. So that's the way we're going to take this one.
Yeah. And we want it fun, but also lessons learned, right? So
fun and lessons learned. Yep. And we'll try to be respectful of those people who were learning lessons at the expense of. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Okay, here we go, Rod. Lesson number 1 is going to be learned from our very own Mike Tyson.
Okay.
Do you remember Mike Tyson's financial issues?
Know Mike Tyson, and I do remember he's the one that I always just comes to mind when I think about somebody who made a ton of money and then probably got in worse trouble because he made money than he would have if he just had, had a regular job and made 50 grand or whatever.
Yeah. So let me just give you a quick paragraph on this. Okay.
Okay.
So Tyson earned more than $400 million, but he spent lavishly on like homes, cars, jewelry, exotic pets like a tiger. We know another boxer that likes tigers, and I don't know why he didn't learn from the previous one, but it's still happening. Anyway, he also financed like massive parties. Anyway, so by 2023 or by 2003, after he had made more than $400 million, he filed bankruptcy. He owed $23 million at the time, including $9 million in divorce settlement, $13 million in unpaid taxes. And it just was an unmitigated disaster. Mm-hmm. Now, I guess the good news for Mike Tyson is he's had enough fame and success over the years that I'm sure he's been able to go out and make some money. I doubt he's like living on nothing these days, just a hunch. But man, he had to learn some really painful lessons. And the lesson there is obviously like the most simple. It's just like managing money, right?
Yeah.
Just the very basics of managing money.
And his image blew up as well.
Okay, well, that doesn't. You're right. He's been able to make more money, but his image, he did take a massive dive in his ability to earn. Mm-hmm. Once you it's one thing to buy one ear off. Once you've bitten two.
Well, and then go into prison for domestic abuse. So
okay, so there's other things.
That doesn't help.
Good point. You're right. And I will say this, poor Mike Tyson has had some catastrophes in his life. I remember he had a kid who died in just a terrible accident that was heartbreaking. So gotcha. Super sad for that. But again, Mike Tyson, we can learn from some of those critical mistakes. It doesn't matter how much money we make. If we don't learn how to manage it, it's going to blow up. Okay, Rod, this is a good opportunity for me to plug our newest business, Money Insights for Kids, which we're going to be launching here within the next few months. I'm really excited about it. But anyway, This issue may not happen if Money Insights for Kids was there to teach Mike Tyson how to manage his money, save and invest, and manage debt, those types of things. Which, again, for someone that made that much money, shouldn't have been that difficult. And we could have made that better. Right?
Okay, so the Mike Tysons of the future are going to be in better shape.
Yep, if they connect with Money Insights for Kids and read books like Little Damon, for example.
Yes,
Little Damon. Okay, Rod. Well, that brings us into celebrity case study number 2, which is kind of similar, but a little bit different. Okay, so actually the first 3 are pretty similar. So they're going to be similar lessons learned, but don't worry. There are many lessons to be learned here, not just mismanaging finance and overspending, although there's a few of those. Okay, Rod, do you know who Tori Spelling is?
I remember the name Tori Spelling, but I couldn't tell you. I couldn't point to them and say that's Tori. Okay,
that's fair. So Tori Spelling is the daughter of Aaron Spelling. Aaron Spelling is one of the biggest Hollywood producers of all time. He TV mogul that had a $500 million net worth. And Tori is the daughter of Aaron, and she was obviously ridiculously rich, but she continued to spend. Sadly for Tori, I don't know how she's doing now, but her dad did not leave his fortune to her. And that didn't help her financial issues any, because I think she was only left $800,000 of his $500 million.
Oh wow, that
was a rough one for her. And I don't know why. I don't know if that was he just believed in giving it to charity or why. I don't know enough about it. But for whatever reason, it did not go to her. But let's be really clear. She had tons of financial issues and mismanaging things well before she didn't get the inheritance that she expected, and she was getting tons of money. So this was a lifelong thing. It makes me think maybe that's the reason she didn't get it. Maybe. Yeah, I'm speculating. I'm speculating here.
But when zeros start falling off of the end, it makes a big difference.
It's bad. It's really bad. Yeah, it's really bad. So anyway, same thing though from her. Just don't overspend. Okay, one more overspend, and then we're going to get into some other ones. Okay, and this is the one that comes to my mind. And the reason, I'm going to give you a hint, Rod. This person consistently makes like the most movies of anybody in Hollywood. And I think it's because he has to in order to like manage his awful reckless spending. Any ideas who we might be talking about?
No.
Nicolas Cage.
Okay.
Nicolas Cage.
I did not know that about him.
He puts out some good movies, but he puts out a ton of bad movies, right? Like I look back and I think about it, like there's some good Nicolas Cage movies over the years, but they're like littered in between like 10 bad ones every time. It feels like Nicolas Cage puts out like 7 movies a year, whereas like the typical actor puts out like, one or maybe like one every few years or something. So anyway, Nicolas Cage gets paid a lot. And he had some serious issues. So let me tell you what he got. Nicolas Cage amassed $150 million fortune during his career. He still has his career, but he lost much of it on impulsive purchases, including 15 homes, $150,000 pet octopus, a dinosaur skull, castles in Europe. And then he had tax issues after that too. And anyway, it just became a mess. And the good news for Nicolas Cage is he keeps plowing away and making some serious money. So as long as he changes his behavior, he can find himself back in a better spot. So, but learn from that. Okay, this next one, Rod, that we're going to get into is something of a different celebrity mishap. Okay. And I still think you should know this. I'm not certain. All right. I feel like 87% sure that you should know what's going on. Actually, I'm going to change that. I'm actually going up to 95. I feel like there's a 95% chance that you definitely know the person, and I think you'll know the issue. Wesley Snipes.
Wesley Snipes.
What do you got? Pull it back. Pull back that brain rod. See if you can come up with it. What kind of issues did Wesley Snipes have? You've got to know this one.
I feel like you put a lot of confidence in me, and I'm just not coming through.
Well, you do know Wesley Snipes, of course, at least,
yes.
right?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Well, that's good. I'm shocked that you don't know of Wesley Snipes' issues, so I'm just going to tell you.
I'm gonna hear it, and hopefully.
Wesley Snipes in 2006, Snipes was convicted of tax evasion for failing to file tax returns from 99 to 2001 on his $7 million income. He argued that his advisors misled him, but anyway, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison in order to pay millions in back taxes and penalties. So yeah, he literally went to jail for tax evasion.
Yeah, that's...
Okay, so this one is a little different lesson, right? Now, and I think there's a conversation that we can have around this because, can I just tell you, I think this lesson has changed. Like, as our market has changed, I feel like the message we get from people has changed a little bit. But I remember early on in my career, it felt like every person I talked to, like net regardless of income, was like, I just pay way too much in taxes. It's all got to be about saving taxes, right? And it was like, and I remember even having some conversations like when I first started in the industry, I connected with local CPA firms, right? Yeah. And so it was, it's not atypical for a business owner to go into their local CPA and be like, okay, how can you help me save my taxes, right? And that's exactly what's happening. And sometimes I'm like, whoa, these people are incredibly aggressive, right? Yeah. So here's my point on this one. Just play in the white. Be smart about it, right? There's a lot of things there's obviously a lot of tax loopholes that we can utilize and take advantage of. And I think we have every right to do it. Like, that's why they're there. Mm-hmm. However, if it's not there, like, let's not try to make it there. That's what the problem ends up being, right? We find, and we talked about this yesterday into something else, Rod, we find something that works for us, that's advantageous, that's helpful, and then we try to squeeze every little piece out of it until it's like we're pushing beyond what it actually is. And now suddenly we have like a real issue. So I'll say this. I have never gotten a sense from any person that we've talked to. Now, to be fair, I haven't been on the phones with as many of them as you have, Rod, but I have not been on with anybody that I can remember who I was like, yeah, that person's just looking to get to evade taxes. Most people are very consistently playing inside of the white versus black area. So tax evasion versus tax, what's the word I want to be having there? Savings but there's a better word. I'll come up with it. Anyway, we want to be proactive in our tax savings. We just have to make sure that we're doing it legally and smart, and honestly, because we don't want to end up like Wesley Snipes. Is that fair to say?
Agreed.
Okay. All right.
Okay, I feel like I need to step up my game now since I kind of let you down on your.
Okay, well, this one I feel you'll, without question, 100% know the person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you'll actually know the issue that we're going to talk about here. And it is a little bit more of a nuanced issue, so it'll be an interesting conversation. So the name is Britney Spears. Ever heard of her?
Yes, I have.
I don't know if you know, but she had this big hit in the 90s. I'm just kidding. You know what it is. Okay. That was when I was in high school, though, Rod. Crazy.
And I was
crazy
not.
to think about it. You were, that's true. You were like you had like 3 kids by then.
College years.
Okay. So probably did have 3 kids. That's probably
maybe.
Okay. Here's the mishap.
We only had 2 by the time I graduated.
Oh, okay. So you didn't have a bunch. You just had a couple. Okay. Britney Spears. Britney Spears was placed under a conservatorship controlled by her father for over 13 years, during which she earned millions. Like when they say millions, we're talking like maybe hundreds of millions, like certainly like 50s of millions, and endorsements. However, she wasn't able to really had any say in how her money was managed. It finally came under public scrutiny. She fought for control over her finances, eventually won, but this is like relatively recently that she won. So, Rod, what lessons do you think we can learn from Britney Spears' situation? Because it is a little different, right? Like, this is a really weird, bizarre situation where basically her parents, her father in this case, from what I understand, was just controlling her. It was really kind of sad too, and you could see like issues with mental health, and it just was a really messy situation. But okay, so what can our listeners actually take away from the Britney Spears mishap?
Well, I think one thought that comes to mind is just that there are legal structures that we can use, and they're totally legal, totally legit. The hesitancy that I see people have is giving up control. If you get to a place where you have to give up control in order to get some benefit on the other side of using those structures, then you just want to be really careful.
Yeah, I think so too. Like the reality is like she was probably like, this was probably like from the time she was a kid, it would have been hard for her to just avoid that situation herself. But when we think about businesses, like the thing that comes to my mind was basically the same idea, right? We have asset protection, we have legal structures, ways that we can build and structure our businesses and our finances so that when issues come up, like, well, this kind of an issue, for example, just couldn't come up, because if they're put in place in the right way on the front end, then hopefully, you avoid these kinds of sad types of issues. The good news for Britney, she has lots of earning power, so I have a feeling she won't be down for long. I'm sure she's not down. Okay, Rod,
and
I know this next one.
I didn't realize it took quite so long to resolve, but I do remember seeing things about it when it came out. Yeah. And the public was most definitely on her side.
Yeah, without question. That one looked like a pretty dirty situation. So looked like dad was taking advantage of his daughter too. But again, I don't know enough about it to speak like, I just know that it's an issue. It was clearly a celebrity mishap situation. I don't even know if I can call it a mishap for her, but it is in general a mishap. So bad situation. Okay, Rod, that is number 5. We still have 5 to go. And we're going to learn a few other lessons along the way too. I'm trying to see. Yeah, I've got a few other lessons that we want to learn. Okay, the next one, Rod, Paul McCartney. Ever heard of him?
I know Paul McCartney.
Okay, so Paul McCartney, 2009, divorce from Heather Mills resulted in one of the most expensive settlements in celebrity history, costing him about $48 million. High-profile nature of the divorce highlighted. I actually don't know like their history and like if they were married a long time, because I have different views on like the divorce element. Because obviously, like there's a part of me that feels like, okay, like if you were even if you were a big earner, but you've been like married your entire life, then to me, I I believe in like that altruistic nature of like sharing with your spouse, right?
Mhm.
Now, having said that, every situation is very different. So like you can't just, so it's almost hard for me to say, oh, wait, they lost XYZ amount of money. In fact, you can learn from Larry David. Oh, he would be a good one to put on here because it's more like it's a mishap, but it's really not. So Larry David was worth, I think, something like $800 million, something crazy, right?
Mhm.
He's the creator of Seinfeld. And in his divorce, and whenever he gave up half his money, whatever you want to say, half his money.
Mhm.
But anytime he's interviewed about it, he's like, she had to put up with me for like 30 years. Like she earned it type of thing. Right.
That's
So
cool.
it was like, so he had the attitude that it wasn't like, I like lost this money. It was really just that it was our money. And so this is how it gets. So anyway,
Yeah.
there's different elements to how this plays out. If you're going into a second marriage, like that looks to me entirely different. So I'll throw my situation out here as an example. I go into a second marriage. I already have a business. My business, I have people in my business who are reliant on me to make sure that the business continues to thrive and be successful. Like in a situation like that, I got a prenup for my business while still combining like personal assets and things with my wife, Heather.
Yeah.
And the reason I did that was because on one side of it, I wanted to make sure that no matter what happens, obviously you never get married planning to get divorced. And
Yeah.
I have every intention to be married for the rest of my life, but I did the first time around too, right?
Mhm.
So, and I'll also say this, I always felt like I needed to like try to give my first wife of 13 years, like as much as I could as well. So I kind of fit more in like that Larry David model. And so so I don't necessarily look at this as much as a mishap unless of course I would say it's a situation where they got married later in life and they already had like their careers thriving. Like, and if you knew that, you should probably be more thoughtful and smart about it. You know what I mean? If
Yeah.
I came into a marriage and I'm in my second marriage, I'm 48 years old and I've got 150 million and they've got like $600, like I'd probably at least create some protection model around that,
Yeah.
right? But on the other hand, if I'd been married since I was 22, I probably just feel like half is half. What's your take on that?
Well, to me, 48 million feels like a small number, a low number for someone like Paul McCartney with all the royalties. Which again, who knows, right? What he does with his money is, he didn't ask me what he should do, but
maybe he should have, Rod. He would have had more of it to give to Heather Mills.
There you go. But so that makes me wonder
Or
if it was
Keith
a later marriage, right? And it was just assets after that marriage that were considered or something like that.
Well, and when that happens, I genuinely do think it's like a ridiculous mishap. If I'm not being smart enough to know that I could put myself in a situation like that after it, just again, if I'm earning a ton of money before I would just be smart enough to protect myself in that way. So if that's what Paul McCartney did, then give him a slap on the hand. But I think he did pretty well either way.
Yeah.
Okay, Rod. Paul McCartney, number 6. Number 7. Dang it, we're back to an overspender. These overspenders are the worst. But it's he's got some other crazy stuff going on. But you know this character, Rod? He plays Jack Sparrow in Pirates of the Caribbean. Our very own, except it's not our own. But it is Johnny Depp. Do you know Johnny Depp?
I know Johnny Depp.
Last movie you saw him was probably like Edward Scissorhands, right?
Well, I have to admit, I did think of Edward Scissorhands.
It's a classic.
But there actually was another one, and I can't even think of the name of it, but it was more of a love story.
Okay, yeah, he has some of those too. So he's been all over. But get this. So the amount of money he's made is insane. Depp has made over $650 million during his career, but has found himself in financial trouble just again due to overspending, mansions, private islands. It doesn't say private. It doesn't say a private island. It says private islands, and even a $3 million cannon to shoot Hunter S. Thompson's ashes. For one shot, he paid $3 million for it.
Wow.
Anyway, long story short, he has apparently a really bad habit of mismanaging money. And so let's just not do it like that. Okay, I want to learn a different lesson though, because there's probably a whole bunch that I could bring up that are more like inconsistent cash flow, overspending, mismanagement, that kind of thing. But this one is a little bit more, I think, relevant to our audience and our situation. So I'm even skipping one here, but number 9 on my list, Rod, Prince.
Prince. Okay, I know this one.
Yeah, tell us about Prince. Tell us about Prince. What happened?
Okay, well, he did very well. Or we should say the artist formerly known as Prince, right? It's the symbol.
Yes. The symbol. Yeah. Yeah. Artist formerly known as Prince. But now that he's gone, I think most people are fine with calling it Prince.
Okay.
So you can go Prince.
Okay, we'll stick with it. Anyway, so his problem was he did absolutely zero planning for what happens with his estate after he died.
That's it.
Even his very own daughter is standing there like, what's going to happen? And the courts had to figure it out. And I admit I didn't follow it all the way through to know what happened. But the point is he had no will, and then obviously no trusts or other things like that, beyond it. So.
Okay, you nailed it, Rod. So Prince's his sudden death, because he was young. His sudden death, he had no will, so his stuff went to his $156 million estate, went to legal battles for years. His heirs and potential beneficiaries fought over it, and much of his estate was consumed by legal fees, like a big portion of it. So a lot of them didn't end up getting, nearly the kind of money they could have, just by having some very simple planning in place. So anyway, this one's obvious, right? Like, we talk about it. I shouldn't say we talk about it all the time, but we touch on it relatively regularly. Yeah. And it's important. I mentioned it. I was even guilty of being someone that preached the importance of it and hadn't done it in my backyard for a good while. I feel very good because I have done it now. I've done it for years, but there was at least a handful of years where I was like, this is important. And then I'd be like, yeah, I need to get to that. I need to get to it. Right. So I get it. It's a hard thing to get to, having conversations about what's going to happen when I die, because none of us want to think about dying. Right. That's not a fun road to go down. However, I would just suggest that if we care about the people that we're providing for, we just have to suck it up and do it. Suck it up and do it. Get over it. Put those things in place so that even if you don't have a $156 million estate, I don't care if it's a $5 million estate or a $2 million estate, it's every bit as important, maybe even more so, that we have at least those basic things in place so that we don't end up, having to deal with, taking things through probate, for example. And we've seen that recently in a situation that we've been involved with, where we've had to work a lot harder than would otherwise need to get to the assets and just get things organized and cleaned up where they should go. So it's not just a hassle; it's an expensive hassle, and often can leave the people that we care about without the money that we wanted, that we worked so hard to hopefully give to them. Okay, Rod, I know you'll know number 10. I'm 100% certain.
Back to the confidence.
Number 10. Train. But I feel like it's kind of going back to our overspend. And pretty much is. But we're going to call it over leveraging and debt in this one.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, this is Michael Jackson. Ever heard of him?
Heard of Michael Jackson. It's funny. So Michael Jackson, he was at his peak when I was in grade school, 4th grade, 5th grade.
Yeah.
And the girls went crazy over him, and so I had a hard time really
you weren't jumping Michael on it Jackson. Immediately.
Yeah. and so it's funny because
That's great.
By the time I became an adult and I would hear the music, then of course
it's pretty cool,
jive on it, but at the time it was just funny.
You were having a hard time. Okay, Rod, I feel like you're one of those progressive commercials. Are you becoming your parent commercials? Is that what's happening? You're not able to let in the new fun, good stuff. Okay, but at least you don't have that attitude toward technology, so I'm cool.
Okay, well, you're gonna love this though because it's actually true. Going back to Paul McCartney, my mom had a hard time with the Beatles. And partly because what she says is that it was mostly
they were just so vulgar.
No, it was it was the silliness of it. She's really we all live in a Yellow Submarine, or
okay,
she just was like, I don't get it, right? She's like, I just don't get it.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay.
So
that pretty
was
funny though.
So, from the Beatles for my mom to Michael Jackson for me. Anyway.
Okay. Well, I will say that. So my daughter, by the way, loves her some Beach Boys, Beatles, like all of those, a bunch of those old bands. And so what's crazy is those were like all-time greats. And even then, there was a lot of people who, at least initially, couldn't jump on the bandwagon. Yeah. I'm all in on the bandwagon. I've learned a lesson recently that I'm taking with me in general, and that is like, be a lot slower to say no to things, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you think about the world as a whole, like it progresses no matter what. So like we can like get on board and learn how to utilize like how to be part of that progression and like benefit and become more efficient. I'm thinking technology in that case, but enjoy things. Or we can like fight against it the whole time, but usually we end up there anyway. So like, let's be quicker to say yes to things. Or maybe that's not the way. Let's be quicker to say maybe. Let's be quicker to say maybe. Be open. Okay, Rod, I could go over, I have some others, but I feel like they're primarily the same lessons learned.
Okay.
So, but we did talk about some important ones. We talked about estate planning. We talked about taxes. Mm-hmm. We obviously talked about just overspending in general. We talked about, having the right legal structures in place. So like, I think that there's some good lessons to be learned from our celebrity mishaps here. I'm sure I missed some really good ones. So if anybody is listening and they're like, Christian, come on, this was like the best celebrity mishap and you totally blew it, then let me know. If it's a hit, then we'll go back to it. If it's a disaster, we won't, naturally. But anyway, I don't think I have any other thoughts, Rod. Do you have any final thoughts before we call it a day on our celebrity mishaps episode?
This has been fun.
Okay, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Money Insights podcast. To learn more about the financial and business strategies discussed in this show, please visit moneyinsights.net. The views and opinions expressed on the Money Insights podcast are not intended to be individual financial, tax, or legal advice. Always consult with the appropriate advisor before making financial decisions. And if you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This will help others find the show and learn wealth-building strategies for themselves. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.